Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News, CNBC News, and NBC Sports Radio Station, AM 1050, FM 106.5, home to the Asian Oprah. Number one talk in the IE. Thank you very much. And streaming everywhere. iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Audible, to Amazon Music, Tiki Live, Rumble, Podchaser, Spreaker, Streaker, and more. Why so many places? I want to maximize my splatter zone for more hope and happiness. So there's no headlines here. If you want the headlines and all of the negative news that's out there, plenty of places to go. But I'm so happy that they were wrong, that a show that was positive, that didn't talk about politics, religion, or anything that shocks you or makes you depressed has lasted not just 1 year, but 13 years. This is consecutive week 685 and 1,412 podcast shows, but who's counting? And I'm so glad that you are here for this guest today, because we've widely anticipated. He got called to do an interview and was not able to make the first date, but I'm so delighted to get him in studio today. It is director-producer Tim Gray and the nonprofit World War II Foundation, who've produced 40 documentary films on the personal stories of World War II. Tim's received 6 regional Emmy Awards for his work, dozens for his international. His films are shot on location in Europe and the Pacific, narrated by celebrity voices including Tom Brokaw, Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon, Dan Aykroyd, etc., etc. This year, however, is the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, and PBS is releasing a documentary that on Bob Hope and his involvement entertaining the troops in actual correspondence and letters with the servicemen and women, titled Miles, Morale, and Memories. Bob Hope and World War II, produced, directed, and brought to you by my guest today. Please welcome to my studio, Tim Gray. So glad to have you.
Thank you. It's nice to hear cheering and applause when you go home. When you go home and you have 5 kids and a wife, sometimes you don't hear that stuff.
Oh, well, I'll let you bring that with you. So delighted you're here. And more things that are positive and grateful. I have breakfast with my guest to start every show, which consists of taking a bite of my gratitude sandwich. Purposely didn't warn you. And I am live. So the only rule is no bloopers of FCC violations, which is the bad words that I will get a fine of $20,000 for. So yeah, I'm glad that you're not my enemy. Otherwise, this would be a whole different show. But what we do, very simply, things that we're grateful for on top of the bun. What we do every single morning, kind of looking around for something good. And then tonight, when you go to bed, what do I like about myself? Which is weightlifting, the foundation for self-care, self-love, mental health, that instead of being your own worst enemy, I want you to be your best friend. And we're going to start that with, what do you like about yourself? So we're going to start at the top of the bun. I am grateful for this thing called my cup of coffee in the morning, that I have the freedom to get it. And I'm a big fan of the deliciousness of life. So I'm going to be one with my coffee. Love it, love it, love it. What are you grateful for, Tim?
My Starbucks coffee.
We're going to have to get a free Starbucks for that endorsement, right?
At least get a gift certificate or something. But
There,
yeah,
at least.
I'm grateful for coffee in the morning too.
Yay. I'm grateful for Harlan, who is my favorite publicist who brings me really, really great guests on my show. One more for you.
It's a good question. I'm grateful for my wife. I have a tremendous and appreciative, and she's just an amazing person. So very
Oh,
patient with me and very supportive of all of our efforts as a foundation.
awesome. And her name is
Sheila.
Sheila. We're going to give her a little love. That's for Sheila. Let's go to the let's go to the bottom of the bun, which is what do you like about yourself? And a lot of us, thanks to my honorable moniker, Oprah, are comfortable talking about mental health now, and I tribute her for that comfort and being able to do that. However, a lot of us are turning to numbers to feel better, and I believe my BS, my belief system, is that you can have a lot of good things outside, but unless you are good on the inside with who you are and know what you're good at, then you're going to have a tough time being happy. And that's my brand, of course. So, what do you like about yourself? And I see eyeballs rolling in the studio. Thank you for joining us live. If you'd like to have breakfast with us, please put in the chat things that you like about yourself. So, I'll start. I appreciate my blissipline of being able to get up every weekday morning and bring you the show, even though they said it wouldn't last more than a year. But I'm so grateful that I continue because I do it for me. No matter if I get up on the wrong side of the bed, by the time I finish the show, I'm feeling pretty good. So that's what I appreciate about myself. Tim, what do you like about yourself?
Oh, that's always an interesting question. I don't know. I think just being determined, my determination. I have a very strong sense of determination when it comes to things, especially when it comes to honoring the World War II generation. I generally don't take no for an answer for people because I've been to a lot of these places like Pearl Harbor and Iwo Jima and Normandy and know what a lot of young men and women went through. And their determination is what saved the world. So that's rubbed off on me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we're going to cut breakfast short this morning because there's so much to talk about today. So thanks for joining us for breakfast. I hope you continue this good life habit for the next 28 consecutive days with or without me on the show, because I want you to feel better. I'm on a happy 88 mission, 88 million more happy people in the next 8 years. So, if you have breakfast with me every morning, you're bound to feel happier than you do normally, especially if you watch the news. So thanks for joining us for breakfast. And now for the topic of the day. It is Bob Hope. And I'm so delighted to bring you Tim Gray, and he's going to take it away and tell us everything that he knows in less than an hour. No, I'm kidding. But
I can do that in about 5 minutes. Everything that I know, I can handle that in 5 minutes.
But before I forget to say this, because my bonus dad, my papa, he's 95 years young. He's not usually interested in my topics or guests. That's not true. But he's especially interested this morning and wanted to make sure that I told my guest that he fought in the Korean War and was entertained by Bob Hope at Christmas. He can't remember who the female counterpart was that accompanied Bob, but at 95, for him to say, and make sure you tell him this morning, that's what I wanted to do. And I'm just so blessed to have Graham Martin in my life. He just lost his wife of 74 years, my bonus mom, a couple of months ago. So we just want to give him some love too. Might as well. Okay, I promise I won't do another applause until after the break. All right, Tim, did you know you would be going to all these places to interview all these wonderful people who did give their lives for the freedoms that we now have in America? When you were a kid, is this what you knew you wanted to do?
I think deep down, when I was about 6, I picked up one of those World War II encyclopedias and was just kind of fascinated by the stories that I read, and then spent 15 years as a television journalist. So then taking the journalism background and bringing it to something I was really, really interested in was a good decision at 36 years old to switch careers and do that. So I really enjoyed that. And, I think you always kind of have a passion in your life. I think everybody has a passion in their life, and to be able to follow that passion and sit down with World War II veterans and witnesses and survivors while they were still with us. We started doing that in 2006, knowing that a lot of them would be passing away. And I'd say about 90% of the interviews we've been able to chronicle over the years and archive, those veterans and witnesses and survivors have passed away. So we have this deep archive of people sharing their stories, even though they're no longer physically with us. So that was important for me. We still come across veterans. They're rare these days. There are only about 60,000 left of the 16 million who served in World War II. So they're spread out all over the country. And when you run into one, it's very special. But you don't run into them as much as you used to back in early 2000s and the 80s and everything else. And that's sad.
Yes, 60,000 60,000 out of
16 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 60, I'm just going to put this in the comments because it's a good statistic.
Yeah.
Because when you do see a veteran, it's, it's tantamount to thank them for their service.
You have to. Any veteran of any war, whether it's World War II or Korea or Vietnam or the war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq, it does mean a lot to them when you go and just say those words.
Yeah. And I would encourage everyone who usually sees Veterans Day or Memorial Day or even July 4th as just a barbecue party to actually go to a service and go through the pomp and circumstance. I think it's a pretty cool what is presented with the colors and all of that. My grandpa Carl served in World War II. He was my mom's adopted Russian Jewish grandfather. And so I got to go as a kid to Arlington for the whole thing. It was incredible.
Yeah, so, Arlington is amazing. And it's just one of those field trips that you think every school should be able to go on. And if you take them to one cemetery in the United States, it's Arlington. Or the Punch Bowl in Honolulu and on the island of Oahu, or luckily overseas to Normandy or Manila or Belgium to see American Stars of David and White Crosses, knowing all these men and women were teenagers or young. It's very emotional.
I bet. And that is what are some things that you discovered in doing this work that kind of caught you off guard, or maybe, you went in with a particular purpose and then sort of changed your mind, or anything like that?
I think when you talk about that generation, in that they saved the world, how humble they were. And I think that's one of the most eye-opening things, that when you sit down with a veteran, World War II veteran and other veterans, how humble they are. They don't want to talk about what they did or what they saw, because a lot of the times it's just horrific what they did and what they saw. But with the World War II generation in particular, they really did save the world. And when they came home, they didn't want to be patted on the back. They didn't want to be told that they were heroes. They would get upset with you if you called them a hero. They would say, my buddy Joe's a hero. He's still buried in a cemetery overseas in Normandy. He's the real hero. So they came back with a sense of survivor's guilt, a lot of them, but they just never wanted to have the accolades. They didn't want their own reality television show. They didn't want to wear t-shirts that said, I saved the world. When if any generation could do that, it would be them. But just being so humble and how they came together as Americans. I think it's a good lesson for what's going on today with how divided we are. Americans do have that potential to come together and solve a problem that's greater than party. And that was a time when that was done. And people look back on that time as that's the potential of America.
Yeah, that great point. Bipartisan is one of my favorite words. Yeah, that's why I don't talk about politics here, because
it's good. No, it's good not to do that.
We're more than our politics.
We are.
So, yeah.
One of my all-time favorite presidents was Eisenhower, and he was a Republican, and he was and bipartisanship was such a mantra of his. And I've had FDR is probably my all-time favorite president because of his leadership during World War II. But bringing people together, get them in a room, and there's a give and take. And Eisenhower was like that. Bob Dole was like that. Daniel Inouye, the senator from Hawaii, was like that, because they were all caught up in World War II, and they understand that you need to work with other people to accomplish a goal and to get that goal done. And so they took that leadership from the war and applied that to politics, and some of the best politicians brought that to the table.
Wow. Great. If you've just tuned in, you're wondering what's going on in studio today. It is Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. And I have a very special guest today. His name is Tim Gray. He's the World War II Foundation, and he brings you real footage, film, and interviews and memories of a very important time for America, talking about important times not to ever forget, not because we want to hate people, but we want to recognize the sacrifices and, lessons learned from all of that time. And so this new wonderful film is coming out on PBS. Did it come out already, or is it about to come out?
It came out around Memorial Day, so it's been airing for a couple of weeks now. Okay,
and it's called Miles Morale Memories, Bob Hope and other.
Bob Hope, World War II.
There we go. It did get covered. So tell me about Bob Hope. I think that's one of the things that to have a description and see through your lens, literally, someone who was an icon, who was a pioneer, who really, I love that line you use in the material that got the celebrities to put down the gun. What was that? Do you know what I'm talking about? To use the camera instead of a gun or something like that. But it was really beautiful. Yeah. Tell me about that, Tim.
Bob Hope was an interesting guy. He was born overseas in England and came to America and grew up in Cleveland. He was very proud to be an American. He became an American citizen during his vaudeville days. And so he had this deep appreciation of America. And when World War II broke out, he wanted to serve. He wanted to go into combat like some other people did from Hollywood, like Clark Gable and Jimmy Stewart. But President Roosevelt told him and Bing Crosby and Humphrey Bogart that you're entertainers, and the best way you can serve your country is to entertain. And that's what he did. But he did it with such caring and such meaning that it wasn't just like, let's go and do this. And it was really deep. It was a real deep appreciation for being an American that he took to Europe and the Pacific and Alaska and North Africa. So the genuineness to the entire schedule that they were on during World War II and the love that they brought to the troops was really genuine. And you see that when you see the old archival videos and his interaction with the troops and what he did during the war. I mean, they traveled 80,000 miles during World War II, Bob and his troop. And that was before the jet age really took off. So you're on propeller-driven aircraft traveling 80,000 miles. And a lot of that was dangerous travel over the Pacific, the vast Pacific Ocean, and into combat areas. And so it was risky, but they wanted to bring America to the troops who were overseas, and that was their goal, and that's what they did.
Yeah, I love that it's morale that's in the title as well. Right. I think we forget that we're It's war is, whatever you believe. I have a lot of people who are, very much against war, and my response is, you can hate the war, but the reality is these veterans went out there and they were in war and they did what they did and should be recognized for it. They don't throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of business. And they really sacrificed everything, right? Everything for on our behalf, right? And so for me, that is the bottom line that is, unfortunately forgotten, and which is why this is such an important interview. And I wanted to highlight too what you said about the veterans. They're so humble, which is also not something that we necessarily have carried forward in our country. Not going there, but it's so like what is it that would honor them the most? I mean, the stories I think are beautiful. I've gotten, as a journalist and also as a freelance, I do coverage of stories, and I love doing the veteran stories because to get eye to eye, and when they're in a wheelchair, and to look in their eyes, and the tears that run down because of the honor or the recognition. It's kind of like, I want it, but I really don't want it.
Yeah.
And you said that.
Yeah. I wanted to point out too, it's funny because you spelled foundation on there instead of foundation, but I want you to know we are a lot of fun.
Okay.
We are a lot of fun. So
well, then I must have known.
I'm going to start calling us a World War II Foundation moving forward and stuff. So I laughed when I saw that. I'm like, oh boy, the foundation. But it's fine. I'm just kidding you. But
no, I want credit.
Yeah, you just trademarked a new. We were going to stamp a new trademark on the foundation. But
thank you.
It's just it's they. And I think you saw this a lot in Vietnam when they came home. They were mixing the politics with the soldiers. And we learned from Vietnam that you don't mix the politics with the soldiers. The soldiers are there because their country asked them to be there. And they are not part of the political ineptness or ineptitude of what's going on in Washington. So it's great to see now when you see soldiers coming home from deployment that in the airports, there are always people cheering for them. And that's not what the Vietnam generation got when they came home. But it took us a long time to figure out that you need to separate the two. The soldiers are there doing what their country asked them to do, if you agree with the politicians who put them there or not. World War II is a different war totally than Vietnam. And what I find interesting is that a lot of the sons of World War II veterans were the ones who went to Vietnam, and they got a totally different reception than what their fathers did when they came home during the war. And that's sad to see, but there's a deep pride there in the veterans who served during World War II. And that's one of the eye-opening things, along with them being so humble. One of the other things I was just going to touch on, what you said earlier, a lot of the times when we interview veterans, it's the first time their families have ever heard the stories, because the veterans never want to burden their own families with what they did and what they saw, but they're happy to talk to a total stranger like myself about it. So I'd say 98% of the time we do an interview with a veteran or a survivor or witness, their families will come up after and say, we had no idea that our dad landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day and was awarded a Silver Star. He never talked about it. We didn't know. And to me, that just shows you both the pain that these men lived with and women lived with, that they wouldn't share it with their own families, but they still feel like it's important enough that they need to be remembered. And I think that's, getting back to your question, that's their fondest wish, is that you don't forget what happened in World War II so it doesn't play out again. And we're starting to see the rise of anti-Semitism around the world again. The world is going a little bit further right. And a lot of these people don't know about Mussolini and don't know about the rise of Nazism and what was happening in fascist Italy during the war, and the genocide of the Holocaust and what was playing out there. So if you don't teach that in school, young people will never know the warning signs. And that's what we try
Yes.
to do. We try to make our films available for young people for free so that they understand when they see something that 9/11 rhymed with Pearl Harbor. So people are like, oh, we can't believe 9/11 happened. And I'm like, let me tell you what happened at Pearl Harbor. So similar: aerial attack, surprise attack, different technology used, different adversary. But these things happen throughout history. So history always rhymes.
Yes, yes. I actually got to, going back to your Vietnam comment, got to interview one of the Chicago Seven before he passed.
Yeah.
So that was a really big interview. But I think you just nailed the point here around when you think of war or the 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, the emphasis or the angle, the camera angle used is to hate. We hate this because they did this to us. But I looked up Armistice Day when I was posting it. It was not as remembering what people did against us. It was the mothers, World War I believe, who wanted to mark a day to remember the horrors of war, to not repeat it.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what led to the start of World War II was the end of World War I. And how Hitler used the Versailles Treaty, which was signed in 1919, against the Allies to start World War II. And it's just interesting that World War I and World War II were really the same war with a halftime show in between, a 20-year halftime show in between. So it's interesting how those things repeated. The World War I was called the Great War and the War to End All Wars. Yet 20 minutes later, we had a world war where between 60 to 70 people died. 60, 70 million people died. So we didn't learn from World War I, and we repeated it. So you need to know the signs to recognize that it's happening again.
And is it happening again?
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
I think there's a war being fought on social media right now. I think there's a civil war being fought on social media right now. And it's divided our country in a lot of ways. The false spread of information. Now you believe everything you see and everything that you hear. Yeah. AI is starting to take over. It's going to get to the point where you're not going to know what is real and what is not real with AI. We use AI in our films, but we always mark it as AI recreation if we're trying to recreate a situation where there doesn't exist photos or video doesn't exist. But pretty soon we're just going to be in one of those things where AI is really going to be sending out all these messages, and it's going to be up to us as gatekeepers to determine whether those messages are real or not. And a lot of times we're just not going to know. It's kind of scary. AI is going to be used for it's like anything on the internet that you're going to see. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. It's just how you use it. We use the internet all the time for research. That's great. We don't use it we don't get our facts off of Wikipedia. It has to be a deep research portal that we're in. So the world's changing.
Absolutely. I'm just going to give a little plug for something that I encourage people to do. This is, make sure you know where your news is coming from. If you haven't seen, if you don't know if it's biased or not, take a look. So it's so important for you to check. I hate it when people forward me stuff that they haven't checked first. And so anyways, we're going to have to take a quick break now for news, weather, and traffic on KCAA, NBC News Radio, AM 1050, FM 106.5, home to the Asian Oprah, number one talk in the IE. Thank you very much. And a word from our sponsor. So we'll be right back. Don't go away. So much more on Bob Hope, World War II, Tim Gray, bringing all of this up for us firsthand. We'll be right back in 2 and 2. That's Chuck Woolery, but it's not going to be 2 minutes. It's peace in, peace out. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Well, she has been dubbed the Asian Oprah, and she just wants all of us to be happy. Dr. Marissa, aka the Asian Oprah, says the most important thing you can choose is choosing to be happy.
You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa.
That's the idea for Dr. Marissa Pay's new book called 8 Ways to Be Happy.
Many of us say, I am my own worst critic. Nobody's harder on me than I am. And my response to that is, stop it! Why are you doing that to yourself? You have to be your biggest fan, because if you can't at the end of the day say, I did a good job, who is? We don't have to constantly be angry at the things that are wrong. Why don't we choose to be happy about things that are right? We have the choice. That's our muscle. And life is so amazing if we can see it.
Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And we're back. You're tuned in to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, the morning show here on KCAA, NBC News Radio, home to the Asian Oprah, #1 talk in the IE. Thank you very much. And streaming everywhere, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and of course my YouTube TV channel, where if you free subscribe and give me the finger, not that one, but this one, you'll get an alert every weekday morning to tune in to a show about hope and happiness with guest topics and a viewpoint that says, if it leads, it bleeds. So we don't want to bleed. We want some heart lines instead of the tough head, crazy mind of the news that's out there. And I have guests and topics for that reason. And today is absolutely no exception. I'm so delighted to have Tim Gray. He's the director, producer, and the head of the nonprofit World War II Foundation, and they've produced 40 documentary films. There's one just released on Memorial Day, and it's called Miles, Morale, and Memories, Bob, Hope, and World War II. Please welcome back to my studio, Tim Gray.
Thank you.
So I promised you you wouldn't get any more applause until
No
after
more
the break.
applause. No more applause.
So tell me more about Bob, Hope, and this film.
Well, one of the interesting things that we found out through the film was Bob Hope was so popular during the war. I mean, he was the #1 radio star. He was within the top 10 box office stars. And to put his life on the line was incredible. And to go, travel 80,000 miles was incredible. But it was the amount of letters that he was getting every week that just blew my mind. I mean, he was receiving 35,000 letters a week from service members and their families. And they would go to his office in California, and they would respond to as many of those letters as they could. While he was performing in Europe or the Pacific, sometimes soldiers would hand him a letter, and they would say, Bob, I know this is asking a lot, but would you hand deliver this letter to my parents when you get back to California or New Mexico or something? And he would. He would show up at somebody's door and ring the doorbell, knock on the door, and they would open it. And Bob Hope would be standing there with a letter from their son, Buster, who Bob met on some small Pacific island called Pavuvu. And they would also ask him when he got home, they would write down their phone numbers on little matchbooks, and he would call family members to let them know that he had seen their son or daughter who was a nurse and that they were okay. And I thought this goes back to the deeper meaning of all this, that he didn't do this to showcase his talents. He did this to showcase what the American soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen were doing during World War II. And he was very, again, genuine in his approach. I mean, you can go and fake this kind of stuff, but he and his troupe of Jerry Colonna and Francis Langford and Patty Thomas and Tony Romano, they didn't fake this stuff. It all came from their heart. And What also we found that was interesting is sometimes he would put on a big show in front of 10,000 soldiers, but he would learn of soldiers who were closer to the front lines who weren't available to see the show. And he and Jerry Colonna would get into a Jeep and drive closer to the front lines and put on a 12-minute show, a shortened show for these soldiers who were closer to the front lines. And I thought that was pretty amazing too.
That's totally amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just incredible to learn about the ins and outs of what went into a show and how his direct goal was to reach as many of these soldiers as possible. And that's what they did through the big shows, through the small shows, to going to hospitals, every which way they could meet a service member during that time. They went to those links to meet those people.
Wow. That is so cool. And you got a lot of this information through working with his daughter. Is that
Linda.
correct?
Yeah, Linda was great. And she talked a lot about being 6 years old and being at home and not knowing whether her dad was coming or going, because he was always getting on a plane or a train or a boat to go entertain the troops. And she didn't understand what war was at that time. Not a lot of 6-year-olds do. So she would ask her mom, and her mom would have to explain to her what was going on in the world at 6 years old and why dad keeps leaving and what he was doing on these trips. So she comprehended early the global spectrum of a world war and what it was about, and that some people didn't come home.
Yeah. He performed like a long time. From World War II through all the wars, basically, right?
Right up until the early 1990s in Afghanistan. So he had started with World War II at March Field in California. That was his first ever performance, even before Pearl Harbor. And he went right up to the beginning, early 1990s, entertaining in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, all over the world. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, I can only imagine the narrators too. I got to meet Gary Sinise at an event, and talk about humble, right? And you have a pretty impressive list there. Dan Aykroyd, I mean, just Tom Brokaw. What would you say are some of the reactions, I'm guessing, after doing a project like that for these actors?
A lot of them, like Gary narrates a lot of our films. So does Jim Nance at CBS Sports, Keith Morrison at Dateline. All these people have some connection to the military in some way. Gary, with his great role in Forrest Gump as Lieutenant Dan, and was also in a film where he played Harry Truman, President Truman. Gary just has this intrinsic interest in supporting the military. Jim Nance's son-in-law is a fighter pilot with the Navy. Dan Aykroyd is a World War II historian. They all have some connection. Tom Brokaw is the guy who labeled the World War II generation the greatest generation. So they all have some kind of support, whether it be in their family or a role that they played as an actor. So they have that connection to the military, and they certainly give us a discount on what they would normally get to narrate a film, and we're just so appreciative of that.
Yeah, for sure. The PBS special is now on. If you are at all, well, I don't care. You have to go and watch it. This is my call to action for today's show is to go. Is it available on YouTube?
It's available at pbs.org.
Okay.
It's also available on our website, and we also have a global app people can download on iTunes and Android and Roku and Fire Stick. It's called the WWII streaming channel. They can watch all of our films for free via the global app that we have or on our website.
Awesome.
Our goal is to make these films free to educators and students, and that's our mission. And we have to raise money to do that, and that's not very easy, especially these days. But we keep battling.
Somebody's asking where to watch it, so I'm just putting that down now in the social. And it is free for schools. I think that is another takeaway. If you're an educator and you're listening, and I know I have a lot of educators that listen to the show, please do contact either Gary, right? And your website is
Yeah, if they just go to our website, it's pretty easy. It's WWII, like World War II, WWII Foundation.org, O-R-G.
okay. And I'm going to pull this up now to make it really easy for you guys to go and check it out. Oh, you've got, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I just saw a little bit of the, let's see, you've got a museum.
Yeah, we do have a museum in Rhode Island that has about 7,000 World War II artifacts. And what we do is we pay for the school buses for schools to come here from all over New England. So a lot of the times teachers, as teachers know these days, buses have been privatized for the public schools. So to go on an actual field trip costs teachers or the schools $400 to $500 these days. So we pick up the cost of the school bus to give the teachers a reason not to say no.
That's good. This is you cleaned up.
Yes. Yes. We're in the midst of working two films right now. They're both on deadline for PBS. One is narrated by Keith Morrison, and the other is narrated by Jim Nance. So as my wife calls it, this is your deadline scruff. So you have your deadline scruff where you drink a lot of coffee and you're doing a lot of rewrites. I'm usually not scruffy, but
yeah, well, you're not scruffy at all. But look there's so much at this website. I'm getting lost in it right now.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that because I have a guest in studio. But please go to this website. There's so much there for you to not just learn about, but also let's spread the word. We really do now more than any time to really educate with some balanced truth around all of what is really going on, so we avoid and hopefully finally learn that we got to put the kind back into humankind. I do want to recognize you. I have an award that I don't give to all my guests. It's called Dr. Marissa's Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award. So thank you so much for what you do and how you're doing it. I'm going to have to send you that little clip so you'll always have that applause anytime you're not feeling
applause worthy.
Appreciated when you go home to the, what did you say? I know.
Dogs really love me.
I know.
Dogs always love me no matter what.
Yes, that's wonderful. Did you say dogs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That I call them unconditional dogs.
Exactly. Dogs are the best.
We think we can love unconditionally. Only dogs can. That's why I don't get one, because I'd never date again. But that's another story. Let's go back to Bob Hope and this great film. Anything you haven't told me? There was so much in the promo. I just wanted you to sort of free flow. But is there anything that I haven't asked you about or you wanted to talk about?
No, I think Bob Hope, a lot of the younger generation doesn't know Bob Hope, but you have to think back to the 1940s, 50s, even after that. Bob Hope was the first stand-up comedian. So all of the stand-up comedians today have a gratitude, right? Yeah, that. Owe a legacy to Bob Hope in many ways. The Jimmy Kimmels, the John Mulaney's, the David Lettermans, Johnny Carson, all those people. Jimmy Fallon. So Bob Hope really was the first stand-up comedian, and he perfected that doing what he did during the war and going out. And that gratitude, I think, for historians who know comedy, it all kind of goes back to what he did in the war and how he delivered during the war. And so I think that's what I want younger people to know, that Bob Hope was the kind of the John Mulaney of his day, and I love John Mulaney. So
Now, I didn't even think of that. And my newest multi-hyphenate edition is stand-up comedy. I performed at the Yuck Yucks in Toronto, where Jim Carrey got his start.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to have to, again, go back and appreciate Bob Hope now as a pioneer. I have Rich Little coming on again for the second time to celebrate my 13-year anniversary next week. So I'm
he's another genius.
Isn't he? He has pictures. I got to interview him the first time at his house in Las Vegas, and he drew pictures of Bob Hope.
Wow.
And pictures with him and Bob Hope all over the walls. And what an amazing, talk about an icon and a pioneer in impressionism for sure.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, his impressions were just legendary, and so many great comedians in the '70s who came up, and on the Carol Burnett show and Laughing and everything. I mean, there've just been so many awesome comedians over the decades, and right now is a good time for comedians too. There are a lot of great ones who have great specials on Netflix, but I just think young comedians today who know their history, and I know guys like John Mulaney do, will always look back on those early days of comedy and say the delivery is what made Bob Hope so talented and so loved. The eyes and the delivery and how he told a joke, and delivery is everything in comedy. So
yeah, I didn't even realize he started in vaudeville.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. When I met Jimmy Fallon, he said to me, "You're Asian Oprah." Well, I'm the Puerto Rican Jerry Lewis.
People
I
know
have that on my YouTube channel too. It's pretty funny. Very, very funny. So how long did it take you to put this particular film together? It
takes about a year to do a film from start to finish. And we usually do about 4 films a year. So we're always working on 2 films at once, usually one in the Pacific and one in Europe. So we deliver about 4 films a year to American Public Television and PBS, which is a lot to do 4 documentaries a year. But as long as we can keep getting funding, the more we can do, the better. And it just gets the information out there to a global audience. And the films do exceptionally well on PBS. And that tells me that there's still a great interest in that generation and what they did and their personal stories.
Yeah. And it really, with the first statistic that you gave, if there's only 60,000 left out of 16 million, then it is up to us. I call us the sandwich generation or the shock absorber generation, because the baby boomers are above us and all the millennials are below us, that we are the communicate. See, every time there's sirens, that means what I just said was very important. Every time, I swear to God. So this is very important for us to really be the communicators to link up, so this next generation never forgets, not the hate, but the lessons learned from the war. And I think using the visual, you have people like Tim who takes all of that verbiage and puts it into a very important, truthful, and entertaining way. I'm guessing because you have a sense of humor. So all of the stuff that is there is for us to use. So what would you like to leave as your call to action for anyone who's listening now or later?
If they would go to our website and just consider a donation, we have to raise all of our own money. I've been doing that for 20 years and for 42 films and a museum. Each year we take about 28 college students with us on one of our film trips to Europe. The top film and history students from the University of Georgia, Syracuse, and Davidson College come with us. And for a lot of these students, it's their first experience learning about World War II, but it's also their first trip abroad. It's their first passport. And we teach them a lot about culture and to the places that they're going, because everyone in the world is different and this is a global, everything is so connected nowadays that they need to understand other cultures and how other people think. And so we do this trip with them, and we have to raise money for that. So we're always dependent on being a nonprofit, on people making donations and supporting our efforts. And usually the people who make donations are the sons and daughters of World War II veterans, or the grandson or granddaughter of a World War II veteran, someone who understands what that person did and might know their story, or might not want to know their story, or might not know the particulars of what they had to do. But we find that young people are fascinated when they do find out that there's somebody in their family that was connected with World War II, and they want to know what Grandpa did in the war. And I think that's important. That's an important part of their own family history, but it's also an important part of a young person understanding that the borders of the world extend much further than the United States.
That's great. That virtual tour is also very cool that you have there of the museum. I
Thank
keep
you.
getting distracted.
Yeah, it's really cool. If we can take students on a virtual tour, or people on a virtual tour of our museum, whether they live in Europe or the Pacific or the United States, and they can go through and see a lot of the artifacts that we have, and how we teach. We teach on a very small, low level of the personal stories of the war, because we want the 17 and 18-year-olds to know what a 17 or 18-year-old was doing during World War II. A lot of the times, those 17 and 18-year-olds were on the front lines at Iwo Jima, or Normandy, or in Italy, or North Africa, or Tarawa, Guadalcanal. So I think it proves to young people that they're capable of great things. And it just so happened that that generation was called to fight a world war, but it also proved they could overcome adversity, and they were called on to do great things. And this generation today, when you meet people in the military today, you say, God, what incredible people they are.
Yes.
And if they're ever called on as well, that they will step up and do great things like the World War II generation did. Let's hope they're not. But when called upon, it's just reassuring to meet young people today in the military and see what they're all about. They represent the best of America.
Yeah. That is a very important point, and I'm glad that you brought that up. The way that we've become polarized around all of that is not great.
No.
You as a filmmaker, I just want to come back and highlight you, because this is an art form. It is now, you are an expert in the sense that all this craziness around AI and the fear around AI and it's going to, overtake us and all that. I would love a little soundbite from you, because you are close to it as far as films. All I know is that, that hullabaloo about taking the best actor out because they used a little AI for his Hungarian, I believe it was, and all of that. So we have a couple minutes left.
Yep.
And speak to that, please.
I think it's just like anything else. When the internet came in the early 1990s, people said this is going to be great, and people said this is going to be bad. And it's just all in the personal user. It's all personal, how you use the information on the internet. And I teach my kids that when you see something on the internet, go to the source. I mean, if it's Newsweek or Time Magazine or the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Boston Globe or something, you know that there are safeguards put in place where that reporter most likely has a journalism degree, and they went through the steps of fact checking and everything. If you see facts on the internet that come from Uncle Bob's website.com, you may want to question that. So again, it's all this information is going to continually grow. It's up to us as the fact checkers to be able to understand and say to ourselves, is this a legitimate source? So it'll be up to us. The buck always stops with us as individuals. And there are always going to be people who go to every website and they'll believe what the Onion says, even though it's all satire. There are always going to be people who believe what they read no matter what, but it's going to get more difficult for us to understand what's real and what's not real. But it comes back to us again as the gatekeeper to fact check. Mm-hmm. And when we do a film, we always fact check. We always reach out to historians who know more about the topic than we do, or we always reach to documents that we know are from the National Archives, legitimate sources. So just make sure all your information comes from a legitimate source. And it's going to get scarier in the next few years because there's going to be a blur there.
Yeah, I remember that. Is it real or is it Memorex?
Yeah.
The young ones will not remember that, but
No.
I mean, it's kind of brought that up for me, and it's so true. And I'm really, tongue in cheek, I'm glad that I wrote a best-selling book before AI, because it's my voice and I actually wrote it. You know, that's the scary thing. But on the other hand, it's great that it allows people who don't speak English as a first language to no longer be judged for their language. So that's the other side of it. But thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed
it. Was my pleasure. This was great. Thank you.
And I wish you well. Everyone, go watch the film Miles Morale, Memories, Bob Hope and World War II on PBS, and go to the website, World War II, WWII Foundation.org, and support Tim Gray and all of his efforts today. Thank you so much. I do this at the end of every show. It's all about balance. You stick up your peace sign for me. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace. Now go and have the best day ever. Tomorrow's Doctors in the House with Dr. Tiffany and myself. See you tomorrow. Thanks, Tim Gray.
Thank you.